Well, good evening, everybody. This time I'm in the United States and in Arizona, so the hour is late, and I'm certainly appreciating what the people in the United States have to go through to attend these Dissipation of Glamour webinars when they occur on our morning schedule in Europe. But we persist, and if it's not possible for you to take in the webinar on a particular day, you can go to Makara or wherever they may be listed. Maybe some of them are now, I don't know, on the YouTube channel, and then listen in, because after all, we are reading. Yeah, we are reading from the book in a systematic manner, and that has to be of value for everybody. Here in the United States, we've just experienced the Thanksgiving, and it's an important time, and it begins to remind you of all that we can value when it's not being corrupted by some form of glamour or illusion. And we do live in a very, I'm afraid, a world in which different forms of selfishness and corruption are rife, and all because of the great misunderstanding of what life's all about, because we have been misled by the glamour we have produced and by the glamour that has been produced around us by those forces of obstruction which seek to make it impossible for us to really go into the new age in the way we should. So just welcome everybody, and I always try to say hi to everybody in the beginning, and just say hi, Alexandra and Veronica and Annette and Jean-Pierre and Karen and Marianne, Marissa, Mariut, Rebecca, Sam, and Suzanne, Tiu, and Tuija is there holding the fort in Finland, and Vera and Zenaidi, and I'm very grateful that Joe and Michael Stacy, Joe Walsh and Michael Stacy, are helping on the technical side here, in case I do such a thing as begin my usual pantomime, without any sound system on, etc. So I listen to the dual voice of God coming from the technical side of the display in case I go astray. So welcome, and thank you very much for your participation. Tonight we will actually meditate upon a profound glamour. They're all so interrelated. We're going to meditate on the glamour of selfishness. And when when you see that, you understand that mistaken identity is there, and misidentification with the personality instead of proper identification as a soul. You understand that everything is pulled out to protect the self that you think you are. And of course, in the beginning, it has to be very erroneous, because we just have not developed that sensitivity of perception that allows us to actually begin to see into the reality of what we are. First as a soul, and then as something more than that, as a spiritual triad, and then as something more and deeper and ever wider and more encompassing as a spirit, the monad, and on it goes as we identify with greater and greater all-pervading wholes, until one day, as some have done even on this earth, we discover that we are pure being itself. And that's, we can begin with that. We're not going to have the same appreciation for that as a solar logos has, or some greater entity, but we can get there. So let's just have a little alignment here at first. This, of course, this is it came from the Tibetan, and Tuija adapted this with the colors given, and It tells us the story of what we will look like on the higher mental plane, what our body of manifestation will be like just before the fourth initiation. So the kind of unfoldment here is very complete, and it represents achievement in terms of what is possible for the human being, and a real entry into rapport with the monad, and a position in hierarchy which is no longer being evaluated as peripheral, but is increasingly central to the life of the ashram and the life of hierarchy. So we are presenting ourselves as a group. We are points of consciousness, points of being consciousness all over the world, really. A few brave souls here in the United States have braved the hour despite its lateness. But wherever we are points of being consciousness. And we are together, even though from the time-space angle we don't seem to be together, yet we are. And as the Christ said, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there am I. So we are, as it were, ideally in the presence of the Christ and his hierarchy, and in relation, at this time at least, to the ashram of the Master Jwal, which is a great training ashram for aspirants such as ourselves, aspirants to initiation. And it is our intention to take the age-old methods which have been carefully presented to us by Master DK, and use the meditations given to help strike that blow against an aspect of the great Mahamaya, this aspect we call glamour. And it is a huge problem, really, in humanity these days, because, well, really, we may be in the Aryan race in terms of consciousness and intended consciousness, but so many human beings are still very much emotionally polarized, emotionally focused, and therefore subject to this great distortion, which we call glamour. I think more and more we'll begin to realize what it is. We get so used to it, maybe, that we don't know we're living in it, but DK has something to say about that. So let's just sound an Om together as we intend together to do our work. Now, the way we've been doing this, now last week, we did have the Thanksgiving, and although it was intended that we would meet, it just wasn't going to be possible because of all the activities that were going on. And we had the full moon, and we had the pre-full moon, and we had lots of things surrounding Sagittarius. thing about Sagittarius, a sign in which we are currently focused, is that once it passes through all those tendencies towards exaggeration and errant seeking, it is a great sign of truth. People see things as they truly are. It's particularly involved in the first and second initiations, and in the lead up to the third, and then later again in some of the higher initiations. And it takes us beyond the miasmas and the fogs and distortions of the astral plane into clear seeing. You know, in a way, Sagittarius is not only a solar plexus sign, it's a sign that has a lot to do with the power of the eye and of the single eye. So we're in that period where we can begin to see. And I would just say, just as a little statement, you know, we're only about a month away from the new intake for the Moria Federation and our deep study of occultism, of spiritual occultism within the Moria Federation. So if some of you have the idea that you would really like to deepen your work in the understanding of what Master DK has presented and what he will present in the new esoteric schools. Of course, we can only approximate that. We can't yet do that whole thing. Then you're most welcome on the Capricorn solstice to become part of the Moria Federation, and we will have a meditation for intake for both faculty and for new students, and for the students that are presently studying. That'll take place on December 21st. So think about this opportunity to deepen your knowledge of spiritual occultism, because it's a huge gift that Master DK has given us to help us see reality with clarity. And this is precisely what we're working on right now, to try to get rid of so many of those distortions that prevent this clear seeing. Now over here, we are, this is our 96th program, and we in our 36th reading, and we're beginning a new section. We have studied somewhat briefly the 7 ways of illusion, and it's always good to be, you know, reviewing those, because basically we have misunderstanding, mistaken thinking, and the inability to really touch the ideas that are motivating us, because we end up doing something to them which robs them of their full power, and perhaps prevents them even from descending into the physical plane, where they have to have their proper effect. So now we begin on glamour proper, and as you know, any of these big words can be used to cover the whole problem on the lower 18 subplanes. You can use the word illusion, as in the Great Illusion. You can use the word glamour. You can use the word Maya. They're all used in a general sense to cover the problems that we encounter with consciousness when consciousness begins to register the phenomenal world of the lower 18 subplanes, which basically, these subplanes are the dense physical body of our planetary logos. And, you know, so they're not even principled from the cosmic sense. And the Buddha basically said, look, don't get attached here in this phenomenal world, because these are just effects and reflections, and they are not really real. So we're learning now how to disengage from the phenomenal world while still remaining effective in service in relation to that phenomenal world. And now we start in this area, which is particularly difficult for humanity as it now stands. Make note as you go along anything you might like to discuss, any ancillary ideas that come to you in the ageless wisdom as we're discussing these matters, and then your turn will come so that we can bring before the group your thoughts, your impressions, and your questions. So this is called glamour on the astral plane. Remember, glamour on the mental plane was called illusion. Glamour on the astral plane is simply called glamour, and glamour on the etheric physical plane is called Maya. All right, so glamour on the astral plane, and I hope I have this correct. Yes, it is correct. All right. I always want my blue bracket so I can insert something as necessary. I have dealt with the problem of illusion or glamour on the mental plane. I dealt with it succinctly and briefly, pointing out that it is not primarily the major problem of this group of aspirants, even this group, think of it, and they are students, close students of the Tibetan, but that they, along with the world aspirant humanity, are primarily occupied with glamour. Now remember that DK sometimes calls humanity the world aspirant. Sometimes he calls it the world disciple. And when the Christ reappears, probably there's going to be a way to refer to humanity as the world initiate of the first degree. So anyway, even the students that were with DK, and you can tell from his letters that he wrote to them, they were primarily occupied with the astral plane and with glamour on the astral plane. Those aspirants who stand in the forefront of humanity and whose task it is to confront the world glamour and forge a way through it, you know, it's pretty thick, have the task of releasing soul energy and mind potency. And think about what our meditations do. Think about the kind of intellectual light that it takes when you study Master DK to really understand what he's saying. This is mind potency, obviously. He's one of the very mental types of masters. At the same time, he's not devoid of the heart and the higher capacities and of releasing soul energy. And as we all know, a great healing comes to us through the releasing of soul energy. Not only the healing of the dense physical body, in which so many are interested from the etheric perspective, but also the healing of the emotions and of the mental vehicle. So these, the soul and mind are pretty much tied up for many people in glamour and illusions, and a lot of time is wasted because of that, and many errant paths which lead nowhere positive are taken. Among these pioneering souls, he's talking to his little group of 9 people at first, but knowing that later people like ourselves would be reading it. Among these pioneering souls, you should take your stand, realizing the magnitude of the opportunity and the imminence of the hour of release. Well, I think he's talking in terms of time as the masters conceive it. The reappearance of the Christ will be a great indicator of at least the beginning phases of this release. And actually, what he did say is that when the Christ does reappear and when every eye shall see him, it will indicate that humanity, or those who can within humanity, have taken the first initiation. Now, that doesn't mean that first degree initiates are completely free of glamour, not by any means, and it may be a number of centuries before humanity can stand with massed intent and confront the world glamour. And in my own opinion, it is the discovery of the light-producing planet Vulcan which will facilitate this release from glamour and this kind of release of radiant light, which will signal that the days of glamorous dominance over human thinking and consciousness are rapidly ending. Okay, you stand on the verge of accepted discipleship. This did become true, and then basically for the group as a whole. This is very important. I want to say this for the group as a whole. Later, he disbanded these groups in later in 1939, and then and that will mean something in terms of the Second World War. And then in 1940, he regrouped the students that he thought he could continue with, and they became the group of 24. They became the new seed group, and the whole group of them were considered to be, as a group, accepted disciples. There was only one among them who had not taken the first initiation, and he was being especially protected. Okay, so anyway, you stand on the verge of accepted discipleship, and you kind of wonder and you kind of ask, is this true of us as well? Is this true of us individually? And as we form our groups, are we involved to any extent in accepted discipleship groups? I think in a way it's a bit easier to be accepted individually as an accepted disciple than to stand with a group, all of whose members have taken the first initiation and are therefore ready for some kind of accepted discipleship status, in which I might say the planets Mercury and Saturn play a very big role. And you can see the kind of mental discrimination that is indicated there. So anyway, you stand on the verge of accepted discipleship. This means that you will shortly have to add to your battle with glamour that of the battle with illusion. Yeah, again, Mercury and Saturn, when you use those planets in the wrong way, they can cut everything up into pieces, and you can't put those pieces back together to see the unity and the wholeness of things. But later, of course, they are extremely useful in revealing reality. So the job of these students is harder, and maybe for people like ourselves, if we persist in this in the right way, maybe we will also have the right kind of difficulties which indicate our progress. Are you strong enough for this? He asked them. And we can ask ourselves. Sometimes we ask ourselves without even knowing why we have to be strong. The battle with illusion and the battle with glamour. Are we strong enough to deal with this? Pause just for a moment, Because, these things can be very elusive, and you can be under the spell of these factors without even knowing it. So maybe in our life, not all Maya is devitalized, not all glamour is dissipated, not all illusion is dispelled. With regard to the latter two, that's almost certainly the case. Are you strong enough for this? Forget not that a disciple who is dealing with the aspiration of his nature, and all disciples are aspirants as well, and who is also wrestling with the problems that result from mental polarization, or from mental focus, because you have to be at least a second-degree initiate in order to really deal with the issues of mental polarization. He tells us this, but sometimes he uses the term mental polarization in a looser way, but somewhere midway between the second and third initiations, we have this issue of mental polarization. But from the very beginning, we might say the problems that result from a keen mental focus and awareness, and with the energies which become active through soul contact, which may not be easy at all, such a disciple is rapidly becoming an integrated personality. So that's a big load. All of that happening all at once, all this wrestling all at once. I mean, do we even realize that we are doing this? And remember, when that moment of really of the real integration of the personality occurs, it's not just when you're kind of an all-together person and you can pursue the selfish ways of the personality effectively. No, it's something else. It means that you really have integrated soul energy and personality energy, and this is consummated significantly at the third initiation. So we really have to count the cost and ask ourselves, can we handle it? So let's just say we can, and that we are good aspirants for this particular type of work. His task is not therefore easy. That's our task, right? And calls for the focused activity of his best self. I like that phrase. By that phrase, he says, I mean the soul and the aspirational personality, not that part of the personality which gets us into all kinds of trouble with selfishness and attachment, but the best parts, the aspirational personality, that part of the personality which responds to the higher aspects of the personality ray. You know, when you have a personality ray, it's not only the very highest parts of it to which you respond, there's also the lower parts, and that's not part of the best self. So, you know, we have, as we are studying along and meditating along, we do tend to identify several, excuse me, several selves, and we should take note about what our best self really might be. Okay, so he says, going on, already you are battling somewhat with the illusion of ideas with which I dealt in my last instruction. You know, the 7 ways of illusion, which we even sort of reviewed last time, and which from time to time I think it would be wise to review and remind ourselves. So a group like ours, excuse me, and especially a group like the one that was gathered around him, we're also dealing with the beginning phases of illusion. Now remember, illusion is a very tricky thing. In a way, the whole universe is the great illusion. You know, we don't have to worry about it from that perspective so much. But the cosmic physical plane is a plane in which illusion is alive and well until we take the 9th initiation. And we have no idea what those greater and more tenuous illusions of the higher cosmic physical plane might really be. For us, they are very high spiritual states, but from the perspective of the master of the Chohan who is rising through the higher levels of the cosmic astral plane, they are still illusions. So we're dealing with the illusion of ideas, and can we really understand what an idea is separate from a thought, and can we find a way to manifest ideas at the right time and in the right way and without the disturbance of our interfering personality? So he goes on to say, you are thus beginning to develop that discrimination which will lead to right choice of life themes. Now remember, where discrimination is found, it's one of the psychic powers in a way. And if you look at it, you know, here in this diagram that was made by Keith Bailey some time ago, we see discrimination is right here on the 4th level of the mental plane, and it's bordering the higher mind, where what we normally call the soul is focused. Here it is, see? Okay, so it's a very, very useful chart, and some of you have this, and I'm, you know, happy to, we can put it in the, we can put it in the chat box at some point. You can download it. It's an AUM chart, Ancient Universal Mysteries, but it comes originally from Master DK, and it shows us where the psychic powers of ever increasing scope are found vibratorily in terms of their subplanes. Okay, so you will thus begin to develop that discrimination, which will lead to right choice of life's themes. Now, we remember when we were studying illusion, how it's so easy for a person to take up a path and to begin to work with an idea, both of which are not his at all. He doesn't understand, better a man's own dharma than the dharma of another, even if you can accomplish that other dharma very well. So probably a lot of us have experienced dead ends when we try to say, I'll choose this life path, and we discover that it's not the right one at all, and we have to rethink and re-choose. So, ask yourself for a second, what choice of life themes have you made? What are you doing in terms of a life theme in this incarnation? Now remember what he said about this huge spiritual, he called it a spiritual propaganda effort, meaning the propagation of certain thoughts, the propagation of certain ideas, so that humanity could become sensitive to what he called the quality of the hidden vision. Now, the kind of things that we talk about all the time, they're hidden from us a little bit, but they're densely hidden to the average human being who is not yet aspiring to the vision of reality and ultimately to the revelation of reality. So there's many of us, who work with the second ray. And if we work with Master DK for a long time and it turns out to be resonant with us, then either our soul or our personality is, soul or monad is on that second ray. And it has to do with revealing the great hidden vision, which is the vision of reality as it is. But anyway, it's really good to put some words, some thoughts on the kind of life theme that we have chosen. And it's usually not necessarily a worldly theme. We may, of course, start out that way because we have to sustain ourselves in the world in a certain way. Some of us might be an architect. Some of us might be like I've been, an opera director. Some of us may be a physician or some kind of more conventional teacher in a department of education. All right, we have to have a life theme initially, which is of the personality initially. But DK said an interesting thing, I think I'm remembering it correctly, that when a person is 2/3 of the way through his evolutionary progress, the life theme or the life objective or the vocation will be influenced by the nature of the soul, by the ray of the soul. That doesn't mean that it'll necessarily be that from the very beginning, but there'll be this change of life, this midlife crisis, this conflict where some other ray comes in, which is of a higher nature and weans you off of the life theme that you had chosen simply as a personality, or may so enrich that choice that new spiritual dimensions come into that original personality choice, and it becomes highly spiritualized. So try to be aware of what life theme you deeply have chosen and what you're working with at this point of your life, or whether perhaps you're in some kind of transition, in that battle between the personality ray and the soul ray. In this instruction, he says, I seek to cast some light upon the glamour which confronts the disciple as an individual, and also consider the aspects of glamour with which he must deal as a world server in training. So thus as a conscious part of a group. Because the further we go in our training, the more we realize that we do not walk alone, as the rules of the road have instructed us. He knows he does not walk alone. So our group, our ray group, our evolutionary group, whatever, not necessarily an outer group, but inner group on the higher mental plane and beyond, these begin to make their impression upon us until finally one day the 7 great groups on the monadic plane are revealed. Speaking symbolically, he says, I would say that the planetary astral body, now remember, there is such a thing as a planetary astral body, okay? Even though he oftentimes says that there's no such thing as the astral plane, as we observe it, because it is a huge illusion. There's a phantasmagoria there, a fantasy there, which has nothing to do with what is real, but the astral body does exist. Otherwise, we'd be in big trouble with a big gap between our mental atoms and our etheric atoms, and no way to bridge the gap. Matter of fact, the unwary magician can die from that by having the astral substance drained away by certain devas who are out of control. But anyway, viewing it from the soul levels, this planetary astral body is lost in the depths of a surrounding fog. Now, Tuija has an image that she often shows. I can't track that image right now, but it really shows the planet, surrounded by dense, dark clouds. And, this is meant to describe the real condition of the planetary astral body and not what we imagine it to be. When at night you look out at some clear sky, you see the stars and suns and planets shining with a clear, cold brilliancy. This reminds one, of course, of the binding of the clear, cold light of the Buddhic plane, and with a twinkling, blazing light, which penetrates for many millions of miles, or light years as they are called. Remember, the whole idea of the light year was coming in the earlier part of the 20th century. We're dealing with writings that were made a long time ago. So the terminology has developed. Anyway, a real condition of clarity. And as Francis Bacon suspected, you were not looking at the same picture in time. I mean, think of it, you're looking at something 10 light years away and the light is reaching you, and 20 light years away it's reaching you, and 100 light years away it's reaching you, and never actually did the picture that you are seeing actually exist in fact. It's kind of a phenomena due to the position of the Earth and your point of observation. It's because we're viewing light coming from different places at different times. So the question is, are those the true positions at all? But that's another matter. He's making a different point here. It penetrates for many millions of miles or light years until the human eye registers them and records the existence of these shining stars. Now, we've all had that great experience, and I think so many of our higher realizations may come on a starry night, okay? Looking, however, at the astral body of our planet, could you but do so, which we cannot do in the way that he says, you would see no such clear shining, but simply a murky ball of seeming steam and mist and fog. Now just ponder on that for just a moment, because that's quite a different vision of what the astral plane might be compared with the way some devotees of the astral plane, or those who really love it and its phenomena, might describe it. A murky, can't see through it, murk, it's an old word, murky ball of seeming steam, the union of fire and water, and mist and fog. Now that's what's really going on, okay? It's something that has to be clarified. This fog is of a density and thickness which would indicate not only impenetrability, but those conditions which are unfavorable to life. It's as if you can't breathe in this stuff, You cannot really function according to your higher faculties in such conditions of murkiness and blindness and steaminess, mistiness, fogginess. You can't, it's unhealthy for the true functions of the human being. Unfavorable to life. And we live in this, and it's causing a lot of disease on all levels, mental and emotional, and in general psychological, and certainly physical as well. These are the miasms that some theories of health promote, or not promote, but I would say advance as a cause, okay? And those miasms work through onto the physical plane as what we recognize as physical disease. So this is how the masters see it, it's no wonderful thing here. Yet we pass and come and go, we the teachers on the inner side, and in that fog, seeing all things misshapen and distorted, labor the sons of men. Now think about that. What we think is as it isn't as it is. It's misshapen, it's distorted, and we're in the midst of all this distortion, lack of proportion. It has not been subjected to the true energies of Libra, which will cause a correct relationship between things on that level. Huge exaggerations, minimizations are found there. The big seems little, the little seems big, the important seems unimportant, the unimportant seems important, and we have to deal with that all the time in our own life and certainly in the life of humanity. Some are so habituated to the fog and the density that they remain oblivious of its existence, regarding it as right and good and the unchangeable place of daily life. And that, I would say, the majority of human beings follow exactly that formula of perception. Yeah, this is how things are. It's never going to change. This is how we live. These are our values, but our values are highly distorted. And therefore, we cannot be harmless because we have to see things in proportion to be harmless. Others have caught faint glimpses of a clearer world wherein more perfect forms and shapes can be seen, and where the fog hides not a dimly sensed reality, though what that reality may be, they know not, and where the fog hides not a dimly sensed reality. You have to accent it right. The fog hides not that dimly sensed reality, but they don't know what the reality may be. Okay, so the glimpse of something better, more perfect, but still rather unknown, okay? Still others, and now he's talking to us and to the disciples of his groups at that time. Still others, such as yourselves, see before you an open path leading to the clear light of day. Now, whenever I see that term, the light of day, I'm reminded of the particular sign which is much involved with the overcoming of glamour, and that is the sign Scorpio. It's featured at the second initiation particularly, and its peculiar type of light, you may remember, in esoteric astrology, right around 329 to 330, right in there, he gives the different types of light of the zodiac. The light of day is the scorpionic light, and it's also the light of the Buddhic plane. And we do have to have that connection, when we build the Antakarana, between the truth of the Buddhic plane and the distortions of the astral plane, straightening those relations out. So others, such as ourselves, let's take it to heart, see before ourselves an open path leading to the clear light of day. And when Master DK has us take that golden pathway into the indigo sphere, that is bringing us into the intuitive and higher mental light over which he is presiding. You know not yet, however, that as you tread the path, you must, on the path itself, work actively and intelligently with the surrounding glamour. This is what we're trying to do here. That's what we're trying to do. This is what we are trying to do, following a trail blazed by those who have liberated themselves from the environing mists and passed on into the world of clear horizons. Think about that for a moment, and think about the clarification of our perception, and think about the observers of reality, which is the second group of servers, and how, they learn really to see reality as it is, with the head center, heart center, and the solar plexus is also involved. The heart center ruling the Buddhic plane, and the solar plexus ruling the astral plane. So much of the time spent by disciples on the path is a process of almost, think of it, cyclic immersion in glamour and fog, alternating with hours of clarity and vision. I remember once I fell into a really big glamour. It was years ago, and I could, a friend of mine said, oops, the veil is descending. He saw it, and then of course later I saw it too. It was a tangible kind of thing that you can almost feel the alteration in perception which was occurring because this particular configuration called a glamour was distorting perception. Maybe you've had some similarity to that, and maybe only afterwards did you realize that the glamour was descending. We want to become so sensitive to these glamours that we can really feel when they are present and not remain oblivious to them. That's one of the great strengths of glamour, that we remain oblivious. And that's one of the strengths of the counterforce, the lords of opposition, that they work so secretly and so quietly that we remain oblivious to what they are doing. We have to see these things, and with experience, we can more and more see them. Okay, now I'm not going to go any further. One might have gone further, but it seems like a whole new subject. So next week we will go further, and I just want to see when this looks like the 6th now. Tuija and I have the Finnish Independence Day on the 6th, but we will have to see what time this might be. I have a feeling that I think we'll be on the, this is the morning schedule, so we'll be on the evening schedule, and we may be able to pull that off. We'll let you know. Okay, we'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is go back here to where I started, and so I don't get lost, which I oftentimes do. Come down to where we have stopped our discussion about the coming up, the 4 things which we need to know how to grasp. So this is going to be the end of number 96, and our day for this was the 30th of November, and we went from page, not many pages, but you know, it's how we understand it that's important, from 69 to, let's call it 70/71, and we'll start with 97 next time. And the academic reading will be number 37. And we'll see exactly how we can do this. We'll look at what the schedule could be, because it's a big day, you know, in the country, in Finland, where we are at the time. So this is going to be, anyway, at present, it's going to be the 6th of December, 18, and we're going to be starting on page 70 and 71. So the next thing is going to be, there are 4 things which you who seek to work with glamour need to grasp. 4 basic recognitions which, when understood, will serve to clear and lighten and therefore straighten your way. So this is going to be very practical, and I think we must not get into it right now because it's a unit unto itself. Okay. Now, I don't know if I can make this small enough to be sensibly visible. I don't think so, but I'll give it a try. It can't be too small, otherwise nobody's going to see it at all. All right. Well, perhaps no, we're not going to see it all under the eye at the same time. No, we're not going to. But maybe you've made notes about what you would like to discuss, or suggest, or ask, etc., etc. And now it's over to you in our discussion session. Yeah. Okay. So what we'll do there, Veronique, you know, I've talked to Keith Bailey about this, and he has done the coloring and all of that kind of thing. The chart is basically a compendium of what Master DK has said. So as long as we acknowledge he's pulled it together, then I think we can use it. And Tuija is doing a lot of that right now too, and definitely her materials will be available to the serious students. So we'll try to get that into the handouts or something like that. And Joe and Michael, I don't know how we go about doing that. I don't know if you have copies of it, but we should put it in next time. Okay, so I see a couple of hands and different things. Question, what do you see as the way through this cyclic alternating? Well, Nessia asked this, a continuity of consciousness and the ability to become not a fluctuating point of light, but to keep the alignment with the soul and prevent the personality from releasing that connection to the soul and getting out of alignment. And then we will not experience to the same degree this cyclic alternation between being soul infused and not being soul infused. I mean, to a certain extent, look, we're entering the age of Aquarius. And as you know from the glyph of Aquarius, it's got the ups and downs. It's got the hill and the valley experience, and DK points that out about how you can be walking in the bright sunlight, and you know the old saying, God's in his heaven and all's right with the world, and you're in the sunny highlands of divine perception. Then you plunge into the blindness of the personality and the feeling of the deprivation of the divine and so forth. But really, what's happening there is not the soul that's fluctuating. It's not God or the soul or the higher power that's saying, now you see me, now you don't. It's not that. It's our own form reacting to the steady presence of the ever available light and power of the soul. So we have to stabilize our form and make sure that through meditation and through the preservation of alignment, we remain ever in the divine flow. And then this cyclic alternation, which can be so distressing to the mystical types that we are, that will cease. So we have, a disciple proceeds with steadiness as much as may be possible. An aspirant, it's a lot of now it's this, now it's that, there's more instability in the life of the aspirant because that steadying effect of mental focus and of proven alignment has not been established. So if we can hold on to our alignment with the soul, these fluctuations will be far reduced. I can't say they'll be reduced entirely, because even on the cross, the Master Jesus, the initiate Jesus at the time, underwent a dark night of the soul. And all of us, maybe, if we're passing through the second degree, there's a minor dark night of the soul. And there are various dark nights along the way when we are deprived of the totality of vision, which we otherwise might have. So I cannot say that all obscuration will end, but this distressing, he says, you look like a point of light approaching and then receding, approaching and receding. It's like sometimes we're bright and sometimes we're dim. That kind of thing depends upon the fluctuation of the form, and we can stabilize that through our disciplic meditation and study and service. Okay, Nessia. So now, Vera, go ahead. Go ahead.
As you talked about some hidden or less visible glamours, that I recently was watching documentary, very good documentary called The Spider's Web, the Britain's Second Empire. It's about the financial system. It's a quite new documentary. It took me 2 days to recover from seeing that. I was disillusioned, shattered by how this tax evasion, those financial machinations, how widespread and systemic, especially in Britain, in London, and it's so less visible because I am not interested in financial matters and accounting, and I underestimated this type of power. And it like nowadays the power is still it is like physical grabbing or killing people. Then there is the economy, exchange of goods, but then there is the finances, and that's the world for itself almost. And so it was quite frightening actually too.
I understand that. You know, the dark light, he says an interesting thing. He says, if we meet our dweller and fail to overcome our dweller, then we begin to identify as the dweller, and we become either the destroyer of souls on the first ray, the deluder of souls on the second ray, or the manipulator of souls on the third ray. So this is obviously a very powerful third ray group, which is steeped in selfishness and basically is working against the right sharing of the things by which people live. Now that's all going to be straightened out by the group of seventh ray initiates of the first degree that are coming in, but meanwhile it's quite horrific, this combination of the third and the seventh ray. But I just want to sound a note of caution, because these things exist, but disciples such as we are trying to be have to be careful of the what I want to call the conspiratorial consciousness. It's as if, you know, there's a devil behind every rock, you know. In other words, one of the major causes of glamour, along with self-pity and criticism, is suspicion. And once we begin to see, my goodness, behind the scenes, there's a lot of manipulations going on, we might develop a suspicious attitude towards many things that don't even deserve it. So we have to be very, very discriminating about where we attempt to discern the true manipulation and avoid applying suspicion to areas where suspicion is not warranted. Because, you know, you sometimes see people that'll jump on any conspiracy theory whatsoever. They just love that stuff. And that itself can be a big, big glamour. So as long as we are forewarned about the danger, we can get into seeing what may be going on behind the scenes and learning how to discriminate where we apply our investigatory consciousness. That's just my word, you know, word of warning.
Yeah. But yeah, what I'm referring to is the Panama Papers, the European Union legislation, which is coming soon in power to curb the tax evasion thing. So I am not subscriber to the conspiratory policy. So when I say something, yeah, I just
I was speaking just in general, you know, because okay. you brought up the subject, and of course, all of these things will come to light inevitably. Now, you know, in the United States, we're about to witness a huge battle between the forces that want to bring certain misdeeds to light and those that want to continue to suppress them so the public has no idea about what went on. And we'll see what the next 2 years bring. But I was just pointing to a note of caution, not to you, but to all of us, when we begin to investigate the machinations, I believe that's the word you used, the machinations of those who work behind the scenes to manipulate us and our consciousness and the whole financial system. But the stuff will come to light, and the shock will be there, and then we'll say all of this has been happening and I've been unaware, and then we have to do something about it. So I appreciate you bringing this up, Vera, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see now. Let's see. Okay, so what I'm doing basically is looking for people who either have their hands up or who have written a question or a statement in the question box.
Rebecca has her hand up.
Okay, and let me just, there we go, Rebecca. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Very well, thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.
Okay, it's Rebecca calling from Queensland, Australia. It's a very comfortable 5 o'clock in the afternoon there, and I really appreciate that you're up at an extremely late hour, and thank you for all of the people in the Antipodes that get a chance to tune into you live when you make this sacrifice of sleep. So thank you, Michael.
Thanks. It's to be done, Rebecca. When we think of our sacrifices, and then we think about what the masters are constantly offering, obviously we grow into that one fine day. Yeah, one fine day. And yeah. Did you have?
Yes,
yeah.
I've got just a couple of comments and then a question. I think, being a third ray mental, I've been sitting here trying to synthesize all of the many questions and comments. So I've distilled it down to, I wanted to give a quick plug for the courses that you mentioned at the beginning of your discourse. I'm a student of Quest Universal.
Mm-hmm,
and
yes.
And I can just, anyone that's contemplating it, I can highly, highly recommend it as an extraordinary discipline in the 3 pillars of study, service, and meditation.
I appreciate your thought. It's tough going for some people because they have their life. They have their family, they have their work. They have issues of just physical strength. And it's demanding. But I think we are very understanding of the individual circumstances of the students, and when they need to reduce their load so that they can actually continue, we work with them. And of course, there's also the quest, the great quest work, which is more psychological and precedes the Quest Universal, at least 1 year of it. So I think we have something for everybody that really wants to get into it, And I think it's very important now to get into it. We've got about six more years before 2025, and in 2025 is when he said, "Look, I'm going to be offering the new teaching, starting from that time." So let's get ourselves up to snuff here. absorbing. Yeah. So go ahead, Rebecca.
That is a very good point about it is very intensive, but I'm a self-paced student, so that's an added advantage too. You don't have to stick to the strict timeline. Just a quick comment for Vera, just for inspiration, since she's looking into and investigating money through that documentary that she just mentioned. It was Vera, wasn't it?
Vera Vastina, yeah.
Exactly. There's the money meditation with Tuija, which is incredibly inspiring. And there's also, I've been looking into the seed group of the financiers. I can't remember what number they are. Number nine. Yeah. So just wanted to give that out to Vera if she wanted to look into that 9th seed group. I have found that incredibly inspiring because it's tuning us more into money being concretized prana and circulating energy, and also feeds beautifully into our glamour work, being such a major glamour as well. Or as Tuija says a lot in our money meditations, it's one of the heads of the Hydra.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So now, So now to the question. I just wanted clarification, Michael, at the beginning of the discourse. You mentioned Vulcan, and
Yes.
and I didn't quite catch.
Why it should be so.
Yeah, you said the
Yeah.
light-producing planet Vulcan. Did you say playing a pivotal role in the dissipation of glamour?
Well, in the old,
Yeah.
in the old, first of all, Vulcan is the will of the soul, and it is the will of the soul to shine with clarity. And then you get the hint from the old mythology that, think of it, Vulcan burnishes the shield of Mars. And, you know, Mars is the ruler of the entire personality. And Vulcan is polishing that shield, which represents the reflective mind, so that it really shines and you can really see through the mind what is happening. And now if you have a dull personality, which is not radiant, which is not polished, which is not refined, then we're not going to see as we should. Now, Vulcan, by the way, is very close to the sun. That much we understand. It is a physical planet, and it has a huge light content or light producing content. It even rules, for most people, it rules the head center, just the way Pluto rules the base of the spine. And we know the kind of radiation in general that comes from the head center. So it's not just the first-rate planet of will. It has a tremendous light associated with it. And were we to get into the monadic rays of the planets, which do exist, and especially for sacred planets, we would probably find that Vulcan has the fourth ray and ultimately the second ray connected with it, even though it has a huge first ray and associated seventh ray and fifth ray. You know, the planets are like people. They have a lot going on in the ray configuration. So Vulcan is the blinding light. Think of how it rules Taurus. See, this incredible blinding light on the fixed cross. Vulcan is a big part of that as well. Yeah. So and it's that kind of light we need to dissipate the glamour according to the technique of light. But Vulcan is not yet really discovered per se. You know, it's not yet discovered in a mass sense, so humanity can begin to really use it. We as disciples, we can begin to use it.
Beautiful, thank you. And I just realized too that that Vulcan, that money is also associated with Vulcan, since we're on that subject.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because especially the concretization of money as metal, you know, as metal, which Vulcan is always working with. So, you know, we're going to learn a lot more about Vulcan. He's been around in mythology for a long time as Hephaestus or Vulcan, depending on whether it's Greek or Roman. And they knew about him. The initiates knew where he was and all that. But so far, we haven't officially discovered Vulcan, although maybe it's going to be like Pluto. In 1915, a photographic image appeared, which was later in 1930 realized to be Pluto. In other words, people saw it in 1915, but they didn't identify it as what it was. And then in 1930, it was officially discovered. And maybe we have, who knows, some images, photographs of that. It's still a dense planet. Now, some people have said about Vulcan that they think that it's somehow an etheric planet and all that. But when DK lists the dense planets, and I'm going to show you what I mean here, if I can just get to esoteric healing. Okay, that's the School for Warriors. Here it is. Take a look. Okay, so this is at the end of esoteric astrology, and notice that Vulcan is a dense physical planet. It's in its third chain and its fourth globe, meaning it's focused in the third chain and in the fourth globe of the third chain. And so this is a very interesting little graph, and just turn to the end of your esoteric astrology book and you'll see this listing of the dense planets. And Vulcan is one of them, even though it's so elusive because it's so close to the sun and so bright in its own way. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Rebecca.
Did
Yeah.
you mention Festus as a mythological? I just wanted to research that.
Hephaestus
Yeah.
is the Greek. I believe he's the Greek version of Vulcan, and Vulcan is
Okay.
the Roman word. Yes, and
Oh, beautiful.
they are the same. They are the same. Yeah. Okay, Rebecca. Very good, and thank you for everything. Appreciate. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. You'll be there. You'll be there. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So Tuija, I see you here. Hi, dear. Hello. Wait. You're self-muted. There you go.
Okay,
Go ahead.
good morning from Finland.
Good morning, dear.
And thank you for all of the comments and creative points. While you were talking, I was just again wondering upon the glamour itself, what it does. And you were also referring in the beginning. So DK says, as I have pointed many times about that one cannot see the glamour. I'm sorry, my dog is there snoring. I tried to make her quiet, but it is snoring and I cannot reach her. So thinking about that, the glamour can be only seen by its results. And that is, I think, for us, the most important point to study within oneself or in the environment. That there are so many thought forms this time. There is so much information going on throughout the world. We have different kinds of press in different kind of devices. We are filled, our heads are filled with all kinds of information. And how do we find in all of this the way of truth and the way of the path to light? And making this great shift to the new civilization. You said just for a while ago about this 6 years, which is remaining for the, I tried to go away now from the dog, which is, sorry, which is remaining of the forerunners. And this time for us, when we think about our responsibility in the world, this time for us is so challenging. And I was thinking, Michael, that could we just have once or few times the glamour webinars, the way that we would really discuss, because I think that we all should gain more and more understanding about our responsibility. It's the responsibility of the new global servers to generate the thought forms in one sense, but the thoughts of the hierarchy. And we are all in certain places, in certain spot of the world, in certain having certain status. So we cannot reach all the people in the world, but we can reach all the people in the world in our meditation work and in our revelations. And I think these revelations would be supported by sharing our real thoughts at the moment of these last years.
Yeah, some of the ways that we have seen over the past several years, or even presently, we have seen glamour emerging. Specific instances and it has to. Of that.
I was just thinking about this. In one sense, one has that in one's nature. It's very natural that one really wants and needs and sees that it is possible to have a totally ideal world. But because we have to make this transition, and in the growth there cannot be ever the smooth process. There's going to be all kinds of things what has to be again realized, and all of this which is coming from the darkness is for humanity to see and realize. And what Vera was pointing out, these fantastic programs and documents which are again lightening some sides of that we, the normal people, we are just in sleep. We don't think what kind of dangers can be created by organizations and manipulations, those who understand, for instance, financial aspect. So we have to bring the counterforce by us, and how we should be doing that is to strengthen our power in that. What is the need? I just read from the nation of the Destiny of the Nations, how DK is talking about the importance of the Great Britain, how it has the destiny to serve the world. Also, we have the United States, which needs to light the way, and he was pointing out that the clamor in United States is to fight for the ideal, but not fight for the need of the world. And I think that this is now manifesting very strongly, that there is the ideal, what is America. We have, every single nation has the ideal of their own country. So, but what is the need in the world? And I think that is one of the big points to solve the clamor in one's own little surroundings, to see here the spot where we are living. What is the need now? How do we address to the needs?
Yeah, and then, that is humanity's need. See, that's it. If we get too narrow and nationalistic, it's just egotism at a national level. And sixth-rate countries seem to have that tendency. United States has a sixth-rate personality. Russia has a sixth-rate personality. Maybe there are others as well that narrow it down and don't think of the larger need. But Aquarius does think of the larger need. It's a lot different from early Leo, if you know what I mean. I know you know what I mean. Yeah.
There was a great discussion in our TV. There was one investigator who was a researcher who was talking about the press point of view and from the political point of view, and he was saying that what is the danger at this time is that the world leaders are choosing the way to lie, just directly lie. And that is against the civilization. The modern civilization.
Exactly. If the truth is going to make us free, what does the lie do? If the truth makes us free, what does the lie do?
So that's why it just came to my mind that could we sometimes have that kind of.
We can. We'll talk about how we can do that, Tuija, and we can plan it, you know, and we'll find times. There's no limit upon us in terms of what we can present and when we can present it. So let's discuss that. I appreciate your thought about that possibility. Getting very, very practical about it. Yeah. Okay.
And then about this image. What I have been doing, why I am shy with that is this, because there are some of the thoughts which DK have not been expressing in those drawings, and I have been putting them. So whomever is getting that, I'm not against to share it, but whomever gets that, everyone has to understand that they are some adaptations and
elaborations. We have carried it a bit farther. I mean, DK has given something, and Tuija and I have added some additional categories and thoughts to them. So we'd have to discriminate which is which. Yeah, but they're lovely, they're beautiful, they're helpful. So let's find ways of getting them out to people.
Right. Okay. Lots of love to everybody. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Tuija. Okay. Alex, and there you are. Go ahead, Alex.
Hello. It's morning. It's sunrise here in the UK. It's just sunrise. It's just sunrise now, and there's been terrific storms and wind and instability over the last few days. It's really wonderful to hear what Tuija said and what Rebecca said and what you said and what Vera said. And I first of all, I just wanted to make a couple of comments and then ask a question. First of all, how wonderful it is that we just all have similar thoughts and concerns and experiences, and it's so good to share in this respect. And I wanted to express sympathy with what Vera said, because the thing is that these days, with communication that we didn't have 50 years ago, all these things are becoming known to us. So, for example, she mentioned the Panama Papers. Well, the Pentagon Papers came out in the 60s, but only now has there been this documentary on Vietnam. It's a 10-part series if you want to see documentaries that will unnerve you. And we didn't know those things then. So, and so this glamour of power and money, which has been underlying operations in the world for so long, we're just becoming really aware of them. And so it is quite unnerving. For example, if you really look into the causes of Brexit, you just have to follow the money. And then you realize. So it's hard to sometimes cope with that, but also find the balance of, like what Rebecca was saying, Tuija's work in recognizing that prana is money. And so we have alternative methods. And it's a matter of, I think, uniting our efforts, feeling that connection, that we know each other are there, and we are focusing on the light, and where there is a glimmer of light, to feed that. I mean, it's the same wherever you are. I know as a teacher, you have students in front of you, you want to feed that light, whatever it is, and help to dissipate the darkness. So I just see that in my mind's eye as what we're doing now, so that one doesn't feel overwhelmed by this power and money glamour that seems to be taking over everything. And for example, watching Parliament this week, no one could convince me this is not a battle between the forces of light and darkness, because there's just lists and lists of groups and organizations and banks and everything that's telling you, don't do this, United Kingdom, don't do this. We don't want this, don't do this. And then you have a few people standing there and saying, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to jump off this cliff and we're going to do this. And the whole thing is surreal. It doesn't even make any sense. And, you know, the polls show people don't want it and this sort of thing anyway. So what I wanted to say was that how much I value the fact that we have our practices, our techniques and groups and each other, so that we can take heart that gathering of light, that focus that we have in our own minds on the same thing, that it has an effect, that it's laying a foundation, and that it has a power of itself, so that when we see things and hear things, like Vera was saying, we don't become disheartened. And my question was, where are you going to be on December 11th when the big vote in Parliament on Brexit takes place?
What is offered, Alex, on that day? Do we have some kind of have we done something?
Well, this is what I'm actually putting feelers out for now, because I don't want to kind of constantly burden people who have, other concerns. But I'm glad that Tuija mentioned the fact that it is rather significant. And
well, let's see what we can do. It's Sunday.
Yeah. Alex, I just, Michael and Alex, I just jump in. I have been planning that we are going to do something similar with like we did with the election, but not so long. But something is happening.
It's so the actual vote. There's debating going on for a long time, but the actual, I think, final vote. I don't think final vote. The actual final vote is on the 11th. I think there might be a first vote on the 10th, So we don't want to
Right.
leave it too late.
Yep.
Whatever
Yeah,
what we do.
exactly.
Why don't
Yeah, that has been something what I have wanted to talk with Michael, but he has been too
yes,
busy.
and I'll tell you what, I've been in the United States, but look, let's just say that Alex and Tuija,
We
you
come together.
talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Good.
let's offer something, because it's equally serious with what's going on in the United States. Remember, the U.S.
Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing, and UK and Russia. The fate of humanity is in the hands of those nations, and that's
Yes,
why
because
yeah.
if we think about what happened again, Russia with the Ukraine, so
Yeah, exactly.
this tension is created, and we have to step in our more what I would say more regular work, and this has been cooking in my mind. But let us come together,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
maybe tonight, Alex. And I'm sorry, group, that we are talking about this practice.
Yes. Tuija, how can we
Yeah.
communicate? How can
I
we
will
communicate?
send you a note. Okay.
Okay, very good, everybody. Now, look, it turns out now to be time for us to go on to our meditation, and I want to thank everybody who has contributed in your with your words and also your thoughts to the process. So thank you for that. And now we're
I'm sorry,
dealing.
can you close me, because I cannot find the microphone from my mobile. Sorry, close me, Mike.
Okay, you there you are. You're good now, Tuija. And if you want to speak something, just raise your hand. But now we get into the I'm sorry. We get into the meditation itself, okay? So the glamour, in this case, very broad and inevitable at first, but if perpetuated beyond its natural cycle, is a great danger. And it is just the selfishness that we see everywhere rampant, based upon misperception, based upon wrong desire. And so it seems to be, in a way, the one of the key glamours of it is the perspective of the personality fighting for its ancient rights without the perspective of the soul. And we're seeing it everywhere, and in our governmental deliberations, we're absolutely seeing it. We're seeing all kinds of cowardice, people who know better, but they're just fighting to preserve certain prerogatives that they are afraid of losing for the personality. So we'll work on this particular glamour. All of these glamours have been interrelated, of course. So we will begin. And we'll, even though we're not going to use the full 10 minutes, we will come together in silence, and you have the list of people, but the point is that as a group we are gathered together. So we think of ourselves scattered apparently across the world, but coming together in our consciousness. And I think we can feel the gathering strength of the group in the silence as we make ourselves available to perform this technique of light which Master DK has given us. Now, it is, we should never forget, it is dangerous work, and people are overcome, and in Master DK's group, there was the overcoming of 2 people to such a serious extent that their aura was badly ravaged, and a lot of healing and repair time was required, and only the intervention of Master DK and the group really saved them from something worse. So let's use this protective formula and that long-armed cross, which he calls the cross of divinity. And as we make the cross is illumined. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And you see the light forming before you as you make the sign of this cross of divinity. And it is before every individual and before the group as a whole, as it faces this daunting work on the astral plane. And we know that this is the technique of light, and we're going to use the vital light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the soul. We're going to bring them all together on the mental plane, the normal mental plane, so that 3 lights become one. And I would say we do this on the 4th subplane of the concrete mental plane. Is the highest part of the normal mental plane in which we customarily work. So we raise up the vital light of matter. Imagine this. And we bring it into the area of our thought. And there it meets the light of mind, clarity, logic, reasoning, all the many mental qualities that we use as we try to arrive at truth. So 2 lights are there. And then we reach imaginatively toward the soul. We think of the soul, the presence of the egoic lotus causal body, the presence of the solar angel, you know, a portion of the solar angel as the angel of the presence, pervading the causal body, and the light of the soul. Shining a much greater light than can be produced from within the personality. So it's as if this light descends into the area of the concrete mind where we have been focusing. And the 3 lights, the vital light of matter, the clear, logical, reasonable light of mind and the illuminating light of the soul, they all come together. And three are like one. Three lights are one light. And then we will say together, cognizant of this triple light, which is now one light, we say, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So we have this triple light, which is now one light, and from it our beam will come forth. We're facing the astral plane, and as we use the words of the formula, we're going to visualize the great searchlight going forth from our triple light as one, and that the beam of our searchlight and also our weapon of dissipation, it is that too, is going to be focused on the astral plane. And where's the astral plane? Well, it's right here. It's, you know, everything is right here. It's just a question of being sensitive, and sometimes the imagination can open the door to that type of awareness. And so, with the idea that we're turning our beam, revelatory beam, and we can almost say weaponized beam of light upon the astral plane, we say, radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And this light of day, as we've said before, you know, it's particularly the light of Scorpio and the light of the intuitional plane, and that's where the human monads are really at work. So we're visualizing that great searchlight turned upon the astral plane. Spend a few moments just seeing that. According to your best conception or image. And then we're going to strengthen that being with the spiritual will. This is the willingness of the higher aspect of our nature. It is, in a way, monadic. In a way, it is atmic. It also goes forth from the jewel in the lotus and from those petals of the egoic lotus, which are concerned with will. And we say then, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. We know what that goal is. In general, it's the dissipation of glamour. But specifically here, we're focusing on this, excuse me, this glamour that cuts across the rays. It's the glamour of selfishness, which arises from a limited personality perspective. So spend a few moments now thinking about this glamour of selfishness and try to imagine all that humanity has lost and is losing of value, of quality, of soul influence, because this glamour of selfishness exists. We'll spend a few moments looking at the results, at the consequences. And I think that we will see there's been a real reduction in the quality of life, both human life and the life of the various kingdoms and planetary life, because this quite natural state of selfishness has been carried on far too long and has become extremely unnaturally distorted. Maybe not as badly as in Atlantis, you know, as he describes the heights of luxury that were reached, and a desire body which was stimulated in a hugely unnatural way, but still very bad, depriving people of what they need to live, while certain powerful types attempt to, as it were, corner the market and have control over the very things that so many millions need, even just to live. So selfishness is always working against the soul infusion which should be happening in the human race. Now, we're going to use these words of power and our imagination and as we do so, we're going to visualize our beam penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and its dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of selfishness. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of selfishness from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour of selfishness. Now we're going to have, continuing to work with these words of power, we're going to have our 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose as we see in our own way, and yet as part of the group process, this work proceeding, this work of weakening and dissipating this glamour of selfishness. Now you can keep that going, of course, in your own thoughts, and it's well to remember here a statement from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I'll paraphrase it. When thoughts contrary to yoga arise, replace those contrary thoughts with thoughts that are against the contrary thoughts. So in this case, dwelling upon the great influence of selflessness is an antidote through the power of substitution for the selfishness which at present is rampant in so many places. Substitute thoughts contrary to the contrary thoughts. This is a key factor, and when people become more soul aware, and when the Christ energy is being born in the heart of a sufficient number of human beings, then this great glamour of selfishness will be significantly weakened. It cannot be banished entirely because it is a stage. But then there are those who have passed beyond the stage and who deliberately choose the selfish path when they could and are ready to choose, could choose and are ready to choose the path of selflessness. So we withdraw our beam imaginatively, knowing or somehow realizing that a little bit of clarity, a little more clarity has been brought to the astral plane, and desires have been somewhat modified so that they are less selfish and tend to serve the group rather than just the self-reflecting individual who sees only himself or herself and only the personal needs. So now we refocus on the mental plane and we turn off the searchlight of the soul. And to close our work, we sound the Om 3 times for the good effects that occur in the mental, emotional, and etheric physical bodies, even though the main focus has been upon the astral vehicle, where the majority of human beings are polarized. we want to thank you for meditating together during these decisive times. Tomorrow we will continue the morning schedule with the Soul of Nations broadcast, which will always be that same YouTube link, which I hope you have by now. It's always the same, making things simpler. I would like to ask Tuija and Alex to remain just a little bit here in this program for just a minute. And then I'd like to say goodbye to all of you with gratitude and lots of love, and the willingness to persist in these subjective, esoteric methods so that we can have our potent effect upon the working out of higher types of patterns onto the dense physical plane. So see you then tomorrow. It'll be the, let's see, I guess it's the 1st of, goodness, it's the 1st of December already, isn't it? So we'll see you then, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 1st of December. And we'll be working with the Soul of Nations. Meanwhile, Alex and Tuija, if you'd be so kind just to remain, and bye-bye to everyone else. Bye-bye.
Okay, now you can hear me. I think so.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now, but I just want to give everybody a chance to go from the program.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to do that because right now we don't. They are gradually leaving, and that will give you and Alex. I've turned off the recording. That might give you and Alex a few minutes